All right, MA Marignon turned 45. Let's see, like 3,000, 4,000 gold of mages get destroyed by some thugs. So yeah, we're teleporting a lot of people around. We're also doing some remote site searching. So we miss bringing some wolves in. We do need to get some patrollers going. I feel like I usually delay that a little too long. I'm still trying to figure out exactly how much gold, how many gems, when is it worth it? I do believe in patrollers, but it is expensive, and it's an extra expense that doesn't immediately help you out right in your wars. So that is what the wolves are about. And and we at least found one astral site, but mostly our remote site searching did not work out this turn. And then we caught a few battles, and we have a few battles of our own, including an attack by Bandar, so hopefully he fell into our trap, and hopefully he didn't fall in with his thugs that will easily destroy our trap. Okay, so this looks like some swarm raiding. Yeah, okay. And it looks like this is probably just province defense, like Lion Tribe province defense, but he kind of has like a built-in thug almost in the PD commander, and then the mage is providing actually some useful spell support. So this is looking a little tough. This is Ariu raiding against, I think, Jotunheim, and I think this is new. I didn't know they were fighting, although could have just missed it. That looked like 2 swarm casts, although his fatigue is maybe a bit too low. Not sure actually what happened there, but this is a lot of province defense for a swarm raid to go up against, including a giant. We did bring a little bit of infantry, all right, and now the Phantasmal Warrior spam, but I just don't think it's going to quite be enough. Lion Tribe PD isn't that good, but if you dump in enough money, you can at least turn around some swarm raiding. Speaking of raiding against fairly heavy PD, this is going to be really heavy PD, but we don't have swarm raiders. Yes, it's these fellows that we have to worry about. They're the only ones who can, oh, interesting, he's patrolling with his pretender. Okay, yeah, we're screwed here. So yeah, I don't know. Let's see. Let's at least see if we can get through the monkeys. So not too worried about the Marcata. Okay, he's making some imps. And I think actually our knights. Okay, no, some of them are diseased. That's rough. In fact, it looks like most of them are diseased. But I was gonna say we might actually fatigue out. The Knights of the Chalice actually do kind of have fatigue issues when they're up against a ton of units. But you can see it wasn't completely crazy, although sadly it does look like his pretender managed to enslave mind on at least one of our knights, 2 of our knights. It was a lot of PD. I knew that wasn't very likely. Let's see. Okay, we successfully retreat with the paladin. That is nice. Those guys are expensive. So that was perhaps a bit foolish. But if it had just been the PD, we probably still would have lost. We need a little bit more knights. But no PD here, so this raid does work out. That group that raided into Bandar, they didn't have a ton of attractive options. We could have gone after those Hydras that he has in his cap circle that are just independent, but why clear his own cap circle? Okay, somebody's just pinging this throne, which has a bunch of Springhawks, which can be kind of nasty. They can also be cheesed. He also has, or rather the throne also has an Anuki of the Sky. It's got some interesting kitting and a ton of air gems, air 8. That's probably going to be a lot of air elementals. That's kind of scary as thrones go. So we'll see, if Shiniyama feels that they can take that, and the Hawks managed to get the commander, even though he was set to retreat. And then, this is a storm, I think? No. Okay, interesting. Wow, this looks like quite a battle, too. So this is the Midgard Fascia conflict, which we only recently became aware of, and he has a bunch of birds, Midgard that is. There are a few, like an indie type that lets you recruit birds, although there are also bird mercenaries, so I'm not sure which these are. He's got his prophet here with an air gem, and then it looks like some Van Jarl thugs in the back here, relatively normal kitting other than the ring of water breathing. We did see that he'd gone underwater, so I'm sure that's what that is about. And then in the Middle Age, they get these sacred vans rather than the Van Heers. And they're, pretty normal elven units, pretty good. Strength can be a bit of a problem for them, as well as protection. And it looks like they have, maybe air elementals from this fellow. We'll see. And then he also has a bunch of Einhairs, which are kind of like the lame Van Heers, or the human berserkers. So they look like they're Van Heers, and they're still, don't get me wrong, they're still dangerous. Yeah, and they're still berserker +5, but they're not sacred, so they can't get quite as disgusting as in previous eras. And then Fascia has a bunch of Colossi Light Infantry. Yeah, these guys, I mean, they're pretty regular, and, you know, in a lot of ways, they're not that impressive. But since they're giants, they deal a lot of damage. I don't know, I quite like these units myself. Fascia is an interesting nation. Maybe eventually try to play them. And then, yeah, they have an event where they get, like, some Gigantes every year. And, like, yeah, I mean, you know, they're pretty legit giant troops. So, like, this is pretty dangerous. And, wow. He's got a lot of mage support here. So these are his sacreds, which, like, yeah, I don't know. These guys, I feel like they're decent. It'll be interesting to see what bless he's given them, but this looks like a massive communion. I think all of these get astral. Yeah, so all these mages are going to be able to enter this communion, although it doesn't really look like any gems have been handed out, so that is always a little sad. But let's see what happens here. I see a bunch of Thunder Ward being cast, so possibly we're going to see Wrathful Skies, or, like, yeah, maybe just some lightning. So, like, yeah, it looks like, actually, are these guys even? Okay, yeah, they have joined together in a communion. It looks like they are using that communion for air. And so they're, you know, casting some lightning. And then, yeah, okay, we also have a storm going up. And that storm is coming from Fascia, and we can see, like, it's paying dividends immediately. That's one of the things, these berserkers, right, cannot get any shock resistance, because they're not sacred. And, like, yeah, these light giant infantry get to throw javelins, which are more dangerous than normal because it's thrown by giants. It's a lot more strength. The birds, of course, can't fly now because of the storm, so no bodyguards on these mages, and there is an attack rear coming here, although it looks like, yeah, we didn't actually take a look at the blesses. Doesn't look like there's enough shock resistance on this bless, which is a pretty tall order, and of course this is coming from someone who took no shock resistance. Nice. Yeah, this is not a cheap bless, a simple bless. Twist Fate is fairly expensive, but it's also pretty good on most elven troops and their thugs, because it's so hard to hit them anyway, right? And then the first hit, well, Twist Fate activates, doesn't bring down the glamour, I believe, which means, you know, you're back to square one. And Blood Surge is usually pretty good on, like, Sacred Cavalry and thugs. That said, you know, without any strength help, they may struggle a bit to get that first kill. On the other hand, this is sort of doubling down, right, on elven strengths and not really doing anything to help them out too much for their weaknesses. Although that said, I feel like Twist Fate is, like, decent defense against Thunderstrike and Lightning Strike. And then I don't know if Fascia actually, oh yeah, they brought some of their sacreds. So let's take a look at their bless real quick here. And let's also turn on team colored squares, so it's a little easier to see what the heck is going on. Ooh, it doesn't look like Fascia managed to really, I mean, they at least missed some people in their blessing. In fact, yeah, it looks like they got no blessing off. So I'm guessing that there's not too much of a bless. I do think Fascia can be played scales. Certainly either something went wrong with the bless strategy or they felt it wasn't worth it. And, like, yeah, there's not that many of these Sacred Cavalry back here. It's a good thing that Fascia managed to get some air elementals out. Kind of interesting that, you know, Vanheim is kind of getting out-aired here. Normally, Vanheim is the one doing the lightning and summoning all the air elementals. And, like, yeah, those air elementals were critical in keeping his mages alive. Unfortunately, mages were distracted, and, you know, the Colossi Light Infantry are good, but they're, you know, just they're giant light infantry. They're still, you know, just regular mundane units. And these, you know, Iron Hairs are pretty scary, and some of the Sacred Cavalry also got mixed in. So yeah, Fascia's sacreds are hanging out a lot longer, but it does look like Vanheim is going to come away with this. Midgard in the late age. Yeah, we have a lot of retreats here from Fascia with their mage core, but still a pretty painful victory, I think, for Vanheim. We'll see, but a very painful loss for Fascia, especially too because they're probably going to lose most of these mages. And that's just the nature of communions. Like, right, the communion slaves end up with a lot of fatigue and aren't able to route off the field. So glad that we caught that battle. It's just an interesting one. Yeah, so Vanheim loses 133 units. And it does look like they've found a way to recruit these raptors, because I don't really see a mercenary commander that would fit for them. And those guys probably aren't, yeah, they're, you know, bog standard, right? So that's not too bad in terms of gold loss, but losing 88 of the Iron Hairs, which I believe are recruit anywhere, so that's not too bad from a recruitment standpoint. But from a gold standpoint, that's a pretty bitter pill to swallow. It's going to be difficult, I think, to quickly replace those losses, or at least expensive to quickly replace those losses. Though mage-wise, right, he only loses 2 Van Jarls. That's significant, but not the end of the world, especially when you balance it against what Fascia lost, which, you know, numerically is less. But similarly, right, these Colossi Light Infantry are almost as expensive, or at least in the same ballpark as those Einherrs. Lost all of the Gigantes, which are, you know, very difficult to replace. They're event only. Not sure how he got the Oathbounds. I feel like that's also probably from an event, so those are going to be difficult to replace. It also looks like they didn't do very well. As Sacreds go, I don't think, well, actually, no, these are pretty expensive Sacreds, so he didn't have that many, didn't lose that many. Really, it's the mage losses here. I mean, I'm sure losing the army, especially too, I think this was on top of Fascia's fort. We'll have to double check that, but I saw a research item or two on his mages. I maybe just forgot to pull them off, but yeah, losing 12 of these Weavers, you know, especially as like half giant mages go, you know, not too expensive, but 12 of them. That said, you know, they're not slow to recruit. They are recruit anywhere. So, you know, if he has the gold, he can replace those losses. And one of his cap onlys escapes, right? And so does this storm captain, who's, you know, a bit cheaper, but still. So yeah, a very bloody battle between those two. And I'm sure like all of their neighbors are interested and, you know, maybe we'll be thinking to come in. And then, yeah, we have Ashdod attacking out. This is another important battle, assuming that Eriu chose to hang out, and Eriu did. In fact, I think this has been somewhat reinforced. Like, yeah, there's a bunch of probably, yeah, thugs. Okay, with some gate cleavers. So looking mostly and a great sort of sharpness. So, like, yeah, these guys are definitely for killing Anakites. And this is kind of one of the downsides of Blood Bond, is that, you know, almost all that damage is going to get dealt out. There's basically no way to overkill, especially like blood bonded giants. So I think that's really going to hurt for Ashdod. And then otherwise, like Eriu's Sacreds are good enough. Like, yeah, and then there's a lot of mage support here to do other stuff. You know, the dogs will at least keep him busy. And then, yeah, he has a bunch of crossbowmen here too, which like aren't going to be a great counter to the Anakites, but for the numbers that are here, Ashdod did bring some mage support this time, although, I mean, only 2 mages. I mean, it's a giant nation, so it's hard to mass them, but still, only 2 mages is rough. A lot of gems here, though, so I like that. Yeah, a lot of gems on both of them. And, you know, he's able to get his bless off. But, of course, like, right, here come all the crossbow bolts. And while, like, the regenerating Anakites are a lot less likely to be killed, like, yeah, like, this guy could easily be killed, you know, by crossbows before he manages to get, before he manages to use all of his fire gems, you know, his fire elementals, basically. And I imagine the other guy's probably going to be making earth elementals. And nice. That's the thing with the dogs, like, especially with this bless, with the double speed, right, is double speed. Yeah, double speed. Like, they're so fast. So good use of the dogs on attack rear. Unfortunately, they get hung up on, like, the Adon, who can actually fight them off. But, yeah, there's just way too much stuff here for this number of Anakites. And, like, again, kind of highlights the issues of relying too long, especially in a large and long game like this, for cap-only Sacreds and a really strong bless on them. So, Anakites can be defeated, and for not too great a cost either. Eriu does lose 13 of their Sacreds, and I mean, these guys aren't cheap, so it does hurt a bit, but, you know, like, I would say that probably Ashdod doesn't have a whole lot left. And then we get attacked somewhere. I don't know. Okay, so, and it's the entire army. Okay, so this is good. This is good, I think, right? We may lose a lot of mages. The good news, there's no ranged components, I mean, other than all the soul slaying, to this army, but, like, you know, our dudes in robes are not going to get sniped, and they have pretty high magic resistance, so the soul slays are most likely going to target our chaff, which means we're going to be able to get out all of our fire elementals. Okay, and he's doing Howl. We do have bodyguards, though, right? Halberdiers aren't fantastic. Unfortunately, our fire elementals are getting distracted by the wolves. You know, that's not great. And now, like, we're doing some evocation spamming, which is much more dangerous. Our guys are much more likely to die due to the blood vengeance. But, like, right, just a few fire elementals are absolutely wrecking these Sacreds. So this is looking like it's going to work out really well for us. And he did manage to, I was thinking possibly he was going to do like mass protection or something, which would have given them fire weakness, which would have been even better for us. But it looks like those nature gems were primarily for Howl. I don't really see any bug spamming either. So, like, yeah, this is exactly what I was hoping for. And, like, you know, I guess, you know, if our army had hung out, like, we probably would have won this. But, yeah, I discussed that to death last turn, and the risk of the thugs was, just too great, and I do think now we'll be able to move forward with a good deal of confidence. Let's take a look. And again, that was a lot of gold for us. So yeah, maybe not quite as good as I'd hoped. Obviously, the mage losses, not very high, because, our fire elementals just weren't going to be able to get through all this chaff. But he loses, 70, so he still has 100 of these sacreds left. But that's a lot of blood vengeance, right, that we just chewed through. Now, his actual sacreds are untouched. So in some ways, yeah, we maybe did less damage than I would have hoped. And so, we trade out basically 5 of our mages. And I mean, they're expensive mages. So actually, yeah. And we left fewer mages than I remembered. So I was perhaps exaggerating our potential gold loss. And we have plenty of, witch hunters and grandmasters nearby and our army. So yeah, we trade out some gems too. Of course, he spends gems. I don't know, maybe a bit of a wash. But I'll definitely take a look and, see how well our Grandmasters and Witch Hunters were able to resist the Blood Vengeance, with no magic resistance gear when they were doing their evocation. Because, that's going to be very interesting in terms of, what are our likely mage losses to be in a major engagement. I also think that Bandar may have had some retreats there. We also had some retreats. Yeah, just a few units. We don't really care about, right? The units that we left behind, it was fine. We were expecting to lose those. So yeah, overall, not too bad. We have some unexpected events. Man, this Mountain King is like an adventurer magnet. And then we get some defense, very nice. And then, okay, nice, a hidden laboratory. This has got to be some leftover luck scales, or at least, blocking our misfortune scales. So let's take a look. But getting pretty decent events, considering we're at misfortune 2, and then this is in Tianxi's province. Well, I guess we're sitting on it, his fort that we're sitting on, so some people show up there. That's nice. And then we catch a bunch of scouts again. This is on top of Mictlan, okay, and Arco. And yeah, actually just kind of all over the place, really. But we are trying to up our patrolling. So, this is the result. And if you aren't patrolling, right, people know what's going on top of your forts, certainly. And then Pangaea was permanently vanquished. It seemed like it was a bit of a rough game for them. But, they were able to stall out Abyssea's siege of their capital for a long, long time. I don't know how many turns. I feel like it might have been 15 or 20 turns. I'll have to go take a look. So nicely done on that, and I'll catch you guys after the cut. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. A bit of a more complicated turn. Of course, first things first, Bandar. So, we're going into overkill mode, or at least I hope it's overkill mode. So I think this amounts to, roughly over 400 units, and an absolute ton of mages, some geared out counter thugs. We've got some fellows to drop rocks if need be, some bugs. We've also got a bug security blanket, and probably enough crossbow bolts to blot out the sun. Is it the most efficient answer? No, probably not. Will it work? I sure hope so. And of course, we're massing it in the Well of Pestilence province, because of course we are. There's really no way around that. We hopefully have enough bags of wine now coming in from various places that we will avoid starvation, or at least keep it to a minimum. And I think we're going to take this force and we're just going to walk at Bandar's capital and finish this situation. There is a chance, right, that Bandar chases, but I think it's pretty unlikely considering how they've been playing, and also, how many losses they just took in terms of their sacred summons. If they do attack us, then, I think the war will more or less be over. And I think it'll be more or less over in 2 or 3 turns. Which is good. Also, one other thing of note, these Seekers of Truths I mistook to be more mages, and, it did actually cross my mind. I'm like, how does he have this many mages, with only 2 forts? It's like, maybe he had some other fort previously that he lost and, moved the mages out from there. But these actually are also summons, I'm assuming. I should double check that, but if we take a look, it's because I killed one out here. And they're not actually mages at all. So yeah, I'm not really sure why he felt the need to get this many of these fellows. They do reduce unrest, which is kind of nice, but otherwise, I don't really see their purpose. I mean, they are sacred, right? So they will trigger blood vengeance, but I mean, they have a pretty they have pretty low hit points, so I don't know, maybe they're quite cheap to summon in, but it seems like kind of an odd use, or an odd way to create combat power. So anyway, we're going to have more blood vengeance to cut through. but I'll take that over like more mages. So Bandar actually has significantly fewer mages than I thought. That's also the case. Like both of these forts are just filled with these Seekers of Truths. So I think, this is pretty much it, right? These are more or less all of Bandar's mages. And yeah, this situation is definitely, overdue. And in the overdue vein, it's entirely possible that I'm being paranoid, but Yis has kind of been massing troops in this castle, and maybe they just want to make sure that they don't get knocked off the land, but also, we don't have a non-aggression pact or anything like that, and I had assumed when Pelagius said that they had elf problems that they were talking about Yis, because Yis is the elf faction that starts underwater and tends to be underwater. However, apparently Vanheim, for whatever reason, has chosen to journey underwater, and at least some of the elf conflict that Pelagia was referring to was, Vanheim raiding them underwater. And if that is the case, then I don't think Yis is occupied, nor probably have they been occupied for the last 5, 10, maybe 15 turns, right? Since whenever Relay died. And we're pretty much like their only land border. I mean, technically, yeah, they don't actually even border Bandar anymore. They could border Bandar if they wanted to, but there's no gains, right, for them to gather. Now, they don't need a land border, right, to launch an attack. Like, they could absolutely launch an attack on Phlegra as well. But between Phlegra's war and my war, right, my war looks it is a lot less done than Phlegra's war. And if we're talking worst case scenario, right, these two have, gotten in touch and been like, hey, why don't we take out Marignon? Now, I don't really have any evidence of that other than the fact that, we have caught some scouts from them. Now, I mean, obviously, people do all kinds of scouting, right? I'm scouting people that I'm not planning on attacking. We caught scouts from 2 factions that we have non-aggression pacts with. So it doesn't really prove anything, but I don't know. I have all of a sudden, right, I got that chill where it's like, oh, there's probably a bunch of elves in my land, isn't there? So we're moving a few mages out, right, to just make some fire elementals. We'll move them into kind of anywhere where we have like random labs, probably due to Miquelin's luck scales, because they can just sit there and research. This one is maybe questionable because if he chooses to move this army here, like one fire elemental isn't going to stop them. But they just didn't really take any fire resistance on their bless, as I recall. So a single fire elemental could actually cause some problems for their raiding groups. We'll probably actually hand out a few more fire gems and maybe move some more mages out. But we don't want to move too many mages out. Also in that vein, right, we've started a fortified city here, which is perhaps too late. I think there's we could be getting attacked next turn, definitely. But potentially Yis, right, is waiting for like the horrific battle that we know is coming. Now, I'm not too worried about it. I've fought a raiding war against elves before, and like I said, without fire resistance on the bless, and Yis's sacreds are capital only, so I actually kind of fancy our chances, and we can probably kick them, off the land. Now, going underwater is going to be a whole separate thing, so I'm really hoping that this is not the case. But yeah, I've got that feeling. And we also look a lot weaker over here than I think we really are, because obviously, we can gateway troops out pretty quickly, but Yis doesn't necessarily know that. So anyway, I, may have taken a little too long to resolve this Bandar situation, and we may pay for it in the form of like a joint Phlegran Yis war, or potentially just one or the other. We also see from Phlegra, right, that, he's just left some Helit warriors kind of on our border here, which, I'm not thrilled about, although it does kind of look like there's a well of pestilence here, so that's kind of a good thing, I guess, for us. So hopefully they get nice and diseased up. Not that I'm too worried about, Helit warriors. And then I guess, some other big news, right? We are bringing in our summons. So we'll be able to just start doing some air site searching, and, we'll probably conscript at least 1 or 2 to try to join with our army, both for wind guide and, a little bit of lightning bolt, just as another weapon that we can use against Bandar's thugs to make sure that our army doesn't bounce to them. So we're summoning one up here in Miquelin, and then I think we're summoning one down in Arcocephaly, and then I think we're also summoning one at home or near home. As you can see though, right, there are I think 30 gems or maybe 25. I can't remember offhand. Let's take a look. Yeah, 25 pearls a piece, right? So this is not cheap. We're going to go through our astral pearls. We're already going through our astral pearls pretty quickly, so we will not be able to keep up this rate of summoning, but still, we'll be able to summon one in every couple of turns, certainly, if we don't have another use for our astral pearls. In a pinch, we can also use them as thugs, although, yeah, I feel like that's probably not a great use for them. We can just use knight groups or even crossbow groups, to do our raiding. And then, of course, the other big news is we have no fire gems anymore. So, we're dumping a lot of fire gems into Eternal Pyre, finally getting it off, so turn 46, we will, fingers crossed, have Eternal Pyre up. And we're going to have to, sit on the income, I think, for at least a few turns to make sure that we don't get it stolen, or that if it does get stolen, we'll be able to steal it back pretty quickly. And then we'll probably do like another round or two of lanterns with some of the income. But once all that is finished, so probably in about 10 turns, give or take, we should have a lot of disposable, fire gems that we can start, dumping into gold for maximum knight production. And we may very well need those knights. And we may cut the lanterns, right? Certainly if two factions come in against us, then we'll probably cut the lanterns or delay the lanterns, right? Do the money for the knights first and then do the lanterns once like the situation stabilizes. But yeah, assuming we don't get attacked, like I'm, feeling pretty good about the situation. Like I think I've definitely taken way too long with Bandar, but I do think that it's winding down, and while this battle will be painful, I think we've cut out enough of his sacreds, and we're bringing just an overwhelming amount of force so that even if we take heavy losses, even if we lose half this army, we're still going to be left with an army of like, 200, 250 units, which is going to be more than enough to take out these Yissian troops. I'm no Yiss expert, but I'm not huge on these troops. Their advantage is that they can go underwater, which is pretty important, right, for a faction that starts underwater. Yeah, here we go. Here's their capital. So you need to recruit and use some of these troops, but Yiss also gets some coastal recruits that are pretty similar to MA Marignyon's units, which, while not fantastic, I think are better than these units. So if Yiss is planning on launching a land war against me, I don't agree with their recruitment. But we'll see. Perhaps they will, prove me wrong. I guess the other big diplomatic news is that the Pelagian player had to bow out due to health reasons, sadly. But their sub got in contact and wanted to know, what kind of diplomatic relations we had. I didn't even realize that we had a border, which, technically we kind of do. A cutoff border that, we probably will lose to Bandar shortly. But they were interested in a non-aggression pact, which I almost didn't take them up on, because I am trying to, sign fewer of those. And it's like, well, we don't really have much of a border, so kind of what's the point? But then I realized, hold on, this is an underwater nation that's asking for a non-aggression pact. You should always sign those, I feel like, if you're a land nation. So I went ahead and accepted that, and overall they seem pretty friendly. They wanted us to forge them some lanterns, and I told them I'm going to need a few turns, but they actually had some fire gems, so they're going to send those over to us. We're going to forge them at cost, at hammer cost, so 3 fire gems per, and then for each one that we forge them, they're going to pay us 2 astral pearls. I have no idea if this is a good deal or not, but we do want astral pearls, right, as we just discussed, and they seemed content with the deal, which is also good, because we could definitely potentially, right, use an underwater friend in the very near future, if my feeling is correct. And they also mentioned that, possibly they would want to fight against Yiss, and I went ahead and supplied them with Yiss's Bless. So hopefully, if we are attacked, we'll be able to, let Pelagia know that, hey, Yiss's forces are busy, and, now is an excellent time to attack, and then that'll take the pressure off of us. So potentially a stroke of fortune there. The other thing I would say is that, Asphodel's recruitment on our border is also a little bit concerning. They may want these Ko-Oni, for other things and other reasons. Actually, I just went and double-checked. Ko-Oni are not stealthy, so that's good. I thought they were. I was a little concerned, right, that is recruiting stealthy troops on our border. We do have a non-aggression pact. I don't really think that they're the kind of player that, would just break it, so we should have at least a little bit of warning. Could be wrong on that. They are recruiting a decent amount of like harpies on our border, which are stealthy, and probably just using them as scouts and, probably scouting us as well as other things, which, always makes me a little bit nervous. But yeah, since the Ko-Oni aren't stealthy, that's perhaps less concerning than I thought. And then the other thing is that this fort from Tianqi is not as packed as I thought it was. So there's only 38 units here apparently, just mainly ogres who are quite strong, so provide pretty decent siege strength. And of course we do have pretty pitiful, siege strength, on top of this fort. So yeah, as long as we can, crack the walls here, which is going to take a second, I think, even with our reinforcements. But we do have pretty significant reinforcements coming in, so this should be enough siege strength to start breaking down the walls. And then once we do break down the walls, this should be a relatively easy fight. Although somebody did mention that Tianqi's skies were filled with shooting stars. And the other thing that we can see is that, Shiniyama was not able to take this Tianqi fort. Now, they have recracked it, but I do think that there was a failed storm, and I'm guessing that Tianqi has also gone for the falling rocks strategy. They have quite a bit of astral earth crosspath, so they're definitely one of the factions that can drop a lot of rocks. And of course, rocks are going to kill our units the same as any other units. So it depends, on how many mages are in here. We can see that there's definitely at least one, and I'm pretty sure that these geomancers are the fellows who can drop rocks. So there's at least one, and where there's one, there's probably more. There can't be too many, but still, this may be a little bit of a painful storm, but probably still worth it, for the amount of gold that we're going to be getting, and the fact that it secures us this river crossing, which is really nice, because as we know, when we don't have river crossings, it forces us sometimes to do unwanted movements. So yeah, I think that covers most of it. We are building a lab here, primarily really to resupply units. We don't really quite have enough fire gems for this army, but next turn we should get enough to send them forward with all the reloads that they need. And we do eventually want to fortify this position, so long term the lab will be good. Our palisades should be going up 2 turns from now. For our enchantresses, we may start to move some witch hunters, or maybe even teleport some witch hunters out to Miglin. I should probably also reach out to Atlantis and kind of see what their relations are with Yis, and determine hey, is Yis involved in a war? Obviously, Pelagia was unaware because they've just subbed in, so they don't really know too much about the game state just yet. Otherwise, Xibalba is more or less gone, and then we can see that Ashdod's capital just got locked down again, so also, probably on their way out. We can see that Agartha is now sieging Jotunheim's capital, so we're moving our scout on top to, see what happens there. But it does look like this is winding down, and is probably why Eryu made this attack, because, I'm guessing that in their estimation, Jotunheim is on the way out, so might as well grab this province while I can. And then, moving some scouts through Man's territory, also looking to see, does Fascia have any armies following up here to keep an eye on this Vanheim-Fascia war. And then I guess probably the last thing is research, which hasn't really changed all that much. We kind of still want all these things for the reasons that we discussed. We may actually back off on Alteration 8. And we're going to go for probably Construction 7 and 8. Construction 7 will get us golems, which I think as human nations are pretty important, and I maybe have not been focusing on them enough. Golems will compete with our air summons for astral pearls, so we'll see about that. Weapons of Sharpness is also an excellent spell that's at construction level 7. Construction level 8 gets you access to the artifacts, the unique items, and it isn't that powerful, of a research target. A lot of the items are not that useful. However, there is an item that it gives a bonus to alchemy, so I'm kind of tempted to, if we're gonna do this silly strategy, let's go all in. I do think with Evocation 7 and Alteration 7 and all the rest of our we have enough research for the near to medium term that I think we're gonna be fine, in most of our fights, and that we probably have a little bit of time to be a little silly. It maybe isn't the best idea, but I think we can get away with it basically. And I've never actually gotten to play around with the artifacts in any actual multiplayer game. So we'll see. It's still a maybe, but it is something that has crossed my mind and that we might end up going for. So yeah, I think that covers turn 45.